All right, Act 2. Act 2, the setting is at the Proctor house. At the beginning, it's just John Proctor and Elizabeth. So in this, it's very tense with the relationship because Elizabeth knows what John did. John is feeling guilty for what he did. So there's this huge tension between the two. Mary Warren is their servant girl, and this is where Elizabeth informs Proctor that she is now going to court. So she has to go and tell everybody, who's been accused, who hasn't, etc., etc. John Proctor also knows that the whole witchcraft issue is all fake. Because remember, in Act 1, Abigail pulled him aside and said it had nothing to do with witches. They were all faking it. So he knows this bit of information. And he's told Elizabeth this, and Elizabeth wants John to go to the court to say this. But remember, we have this little love affair between not Mary Warren, but Abigail and John Proctor. So John Proctor over here, he's really kind of stuck, because he can't really go to court and say anything because Abigail could also pipe up and say that they had an affair. So John Proctor right now is kind of, stuck with the truth because he can't really say what was going on. So he can't really prove it. But at the same time, he knows, that it's all a sham and that she needs to be, the court needs to know this. All right, if we look at Mary Warren from Act 1 to Act 2 changes. So we know she's changed because she's a bit more bold. Before remember we talked about how she was kind of weak. Now she's bold. She's standing up to John Proctor and telling him that no, she will go to court because she has to. In the scene 2, Mary Warren also gives Elizabeth the poppet. So Elizabeth is, she's kind of taken aback. She's puzzled about the gift, but she still accepts it. So then they keep talking to Mary Warren, and Mary Warren claims that 39 people have been accused now. So with that, Goody Osborne will be hanged. Sarah has confessed, but an interesting part here is that she's also pregnant. And in the Puritan society, you could never hang a pregnant woman. So she's being saved because of this pregnant. And this is also where Mary Warren says that Elizabeth has also been accused. So they're not too, surprised by this because they know that Abigail is probably behind this. So, and Mary Warren kind of, with this too, claims that, there wasn't any witchcraft of this. Her testimony for Elizabeth, she likes Elizabeth. She doesn't want to get her into trouble. So after that, Mary Warren goes off to bed, even though John is not too happy with her and he even gets out like a whip to beat her to make sure she doesn't go. But she's really, changing, asserting herself. Because again, he's kind of stuck here with the news that she has, because he doesn't want to tick her off anymore, because then he might be accused. So again, Abigail's behind this because she's jealous. and she thinks this is the time that she can get John Proctor away from his wife. All right, next part. So kind of in between here, Elizabeth has asked John to go talk to Abby to get everything, out in the open, and he's kind of begrudgingly going. This is where Hale shows up at the house. So Hale, remember, is the other reverend who has come to kind of help figure out everybody, what's going on. He's got to determine if people are witches or not. So he shows up. And this is where he has to determine the Christian character of John Proctor. So some of the things John Proctor has not done: he has not gone to church every Sunday. So John Proctor says that Elizabeth has been sick, and that's one of the reasons he does. So also he begins to tell the differences between, why he doesn't like Paris. So remember, Paris always wants the more money. He does not talk of God very much, and Proctor doesn't want all the hell and damnation here. Okay, one of his sons is not baptized. And John claims that he doesn't want Paris's hands on his child, and that's one of the reasons. So with this, Hale wants John to recite the 10 Commandments. So I'm not going to tell you which one, but he forgets one. So make sure you find that out. So here again, John Proctor is telling Hale, that Elizabeth is innocent. That nothing, she's not into witchcraft. She's a very holy woman. She's a good woman. She's pure. So John Proctor here is beginning to defend his wife. He also tells Hale at this point that Abigail told him it had nothing to do with witchcraft. And Hale, he had his suspicions, but, he's still kind of shocked because of everything that's going on in the court. So towards the end of all of this, Giles comes back, and Francis Nurse comes to the house, and they start telling that their wives have now been accused. And they're just frantic. They can't believe this is happening to them. Also, one of the shockers is that Rebecca Nurse, remember that's Francis Nurse's wife, the good woman who Hale really looks up to, who has the 11 kids, has also been. So you can see how the accusing of all these women is getting out of hand. And Hale here, he's, I bet, can imagine, a bit overwhelmed with all these news that all these women are being accused. So he really has to find the truth here because, again, he really liked Rebecca Nurse. He knows her reputation, so he's got all this information now that he has to absorb. All right, the last scene in Act 2. So, again, he's just been talking to Reverend Hale. They found out that Rebecca Nurse and Elizabeth, all these women have started to be accused when Ezekiel Cheever and Marshall Herrick show up. So these guys are kind of like the police. So they talk, and they're a bit afraid of John Proctor. They really don't want to take away his wife, but they have to follow the rules. So there's been a warrant for Elizabeth's arrest, and they have to check the house for puppets. So remember that the Puritans, they don't like material goods. So having this doll in this house is, a sign of, having a material good. So it was kind of strange that Elizabeth would have this. And again, remember, she really was kind of puzzled by Mary Warren giving her this poppet. So, of course, they find the poppet, and but Elizabeth explains that Mary Warren gave it to her. Mary Warren gave her the poppet because she made it while she was in court. So, further looking at the poppet, they find a long needle.
Hey, Mrs. Talbert, I'm Bob.
Again, there's a long needle stuck in the poppet. So he claims that Abigail Williams was stabbed in court, and claims that Elizabeth's spirit did it. So they know this is kind of crazy because it was Mary Warren who had the poppet and the long needle, Who's to say that Abigail didn't put it there herself? But at this point, they cannot prove it. So they still can't convince Mr. Cheever and Mr. Herrick to leave them here. So they are, Elizabeth is taken away. So John Proctor at this point is angry because he sees that this whole situation is crazy, and he's trying to figure out how he can fix it. But at this point, he can't. Also, Mary Warren tells John Proctor that she can't go against Abigail. Can't say anything. And that she also gives him a warning that Abby will charge him with lechery. And remember, lechery is basically that they just had an affair. And that she thinks that, this warning, if this happens, it will ruin him. Because he's a good, upstanding citizen in this town. And, having an affair, even in the Puritan society, is crazy. And with Abigail, that would just completely ruin his reputation. So right now, John is really torn between saving his wife and saving his reputation. You also have to realize that Mary Warren, she's still kind of this weak girl as well. So she is terrified of the other girls. And she does not want them to turn on her. So she tells John Proctor that she will not testify about anything anymore.